tragedy which has taken place in Syria, in Iraq, and in so many other nations of the Middle East. It was Dr. Salul and his fellow doctors who had the courage to go to Syria in the midst of the war to treat the victims, who came home with those photographs and showed this senator in graphic terms the suffering that was occurring. First, a tribute to them for their courage in using their medical skills to help those in this wonderful family, there was Suzanne, who was working so hard with the Syrian refugees. And when our governor announced that he would publicly stop Syrian refugees from coming to Illinois, I reached out to her and we sat down with those families to assure them that they were still welcome in the land of Lincoln. Thank you, Suzanne. This is the most significant humanitarian tragedy of my lifetime. Millions of people have died, millions more have been displaced. This last week, to meet in Washington with King Abdullah, an extraordinary man whom I admire so much, whose nation has absorbed millions of refugees, Palestinians, Syrians, Iraqis, and others, and somehow they managed to survive. But he is a lesson to all of us, of a man who is willing to risk his power as a monarch, and even to risk his nation, to show a caring heart for those who are refugees and asylees. America can do no less in this time when we face this humanitarian crisis in the Middle East and around the world, where we have more refugees than ever in the history of the world. That is the reality. It is hard for me to imagine. The only time I was ever in Syria was 17 years ago in Damascus. I had a meeting with the new leader, Hafez al-Assad, and I didn't know anything about him, and he was brand new and didn't know much about governing. We met in his palace. He said, be sure and visit the mosque in Damascus, which I did. And then I told him we were going to cross the Bekaa Valley by car to go to Beirut. Oh, don't do it, it's too dangerous. We did it anyway. Crazy things you do. But it was a safe country. There were problems, the problems we all knew about, but it was a safe place to live. And many great things, many great examples of culture and history were there. And now, today, to look at the wreckage of Syria and realize what has happened to that great country is heartbreaking. This historic moment is not just about this humanitarian crisis, though. It is an historic moment in the United States of America as well. The lessons of history should not be forgotten at this moment. In the midst of World War II, under the leadership of a president whom I deeply respect, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the United States of America made some of the worst decisions in its history. We placed in prison camps 120,000 Japanese Americans in the midst of the Second World War. And we turned away request after request by Jews trying to escape the Holocaust in Nazi Germany and come to the United States. The worst, the SS St. Louis, you know the story. Sadly, we all know the story. The ship of 900 passengers left Germany to come to the United States to escape the Nazis. They landed in Havana, Cuba, and were turned away. They landed in Miami, Florida, and were turned away. They went back to Europe with 900 passengers. Several hundred died in the Holocaust because we would not let them come ashore in the United States. Senator Robert Wagner of New York offered an amendment to allow 10,000 Jewish children to come to the United States from Germany. It was defeated in the United States Senate. 10,000 children. Luckily, after that war, the United States reflected on what we had just done. And with some pity and shame, we said we are going to change. We are going to set an example for the world when it comes to refugees and asylees, and we did. We kept our word time and time again to lead the world in accepting refugees. 450,000 Cubans who escaped Fidel Castro's communism to come to the United States for freedom. Did they face extreme vetting? No. When they put their foot on the shore of the United States, they were welcome. Today we have 4 Hispanic senators in the United States Senate. 3 are Cuban Americans. Have the Cubans made a contribution to the United States? You bet they have. They were not alone. We accepted over 120,000 Jews from the Soviet Union who were facing persecution for their faith. We opened our homes and our communities to these Jewish refugees to come to our country. And whether it was Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Somalia, the list went on and on. That was the definition of America. A definition which you can find on the base of that statue outside the harbor in New York. Give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, your tempest tossed. I lift my lamp beside this golden door. That is who we are. And now, at this historic moment, someone is trying to redefine America to the world. In the 17th day of his presidency, Donald Trump has made history. He is the first president in the history of the United States, the first, to ever have an executive order stopped by the federal courts within 2 weeks of his presidency. He's the first president of the United States to ever dismiss an attorney general in the first 2 weeks in office because she said, I cannot in good conscience enforce your executive order. And what we are seeing at the airports across America, in the streets across America, what we see today in this gathering, are people stepping forward and saying, we will not let this happen to America. We will not let this president define America. We know who we are. We are a diverse nation, proud of our diversity. When I said fellow immigrants earlier, I meant it. My mother was an immigrant to this country. She was brought from Lithuania at the age of 2. And now her son has the honor of representing you in the United States Senate. That's my story. That's my family's story. That's America's story. And we gather today to try to pass the message along to everyone that we will fight with every fiber of our being and all the strength we have to put an end to this divisive order that stops refugees and immigrants from coming to the United States, to put an end to this mindless wall that the president says needs to be built between us and Mexico, to make sure that we stand up for immigration as part of America. 16 years ago, we had a call in our office from a Korean lady who had a daughter